In the shadow of St. Paul's Church in Jarrow, where the air carries the faint temps of coal dust and the distant hum of the River Tyne, an ancient oak chair stands as a silent sentinel. Bede's chair, they call it, its rough-hewn frame unadorned yet heavy with the weight of centuries. Crafted in an age when monks bent over parchment by candlelight and kings sought divine favor, it is said to have cradled the venerable Bede himself, the scholar monk whose histories wove England's early days into words that would endure. Whether Bede's wisdom seeped into its grain or the prayers of countless souls shaped its legend, the chair is more than wood. It is a vessel of hope, its surface polished by the dreams of the young, the vows of brides, and the quiet pleas of mothers to be. The villagers speak of the chair with reverence, their voices hushed as if to honor its secrets. Its oak, drawn from a forest long since felled, seems to hum with memory, the craftsman's chisel, the whispered rhymes, the hands that have brushed its arms in search of blessing. For centuries, it has been a beacon for the longing, a place where faith and folklore intertwine. The old rhyme, passed down through generations, lingers like a prayer. Lay beads wood beneath thy head, and dream of whom thou art to wed. In Jarrow, the chair's magic is a living tradition, tended by folk like old Agnes, the church's caretaker, whose lined face and steady hands have swept the stone floors of St. Paul's for decades. Her cottage, a stone's throw from the churchyard, is a haven for stories, where children gather on winter evenings to hear tales of the chair's power. It's not the wood alone, Agnes says, her eyes glinting in the firelight. It's the heart that believes what the wood promises. Her words carry the weight of centuries, but they ring truest in the story of 1913, when the chair bore witness to a love tested by loss and a hope that defied the darkness. In the early 20th century, Jarrow was a town of grit and grace, its streets alive with the clatter of shipyards and the smoke of industry. The world was changing, railways stitched the countryside, and factories crowned the horizon, but St. Paul's Church remained a constant, its ancient walls a refuge from the clamour. The chair, tucked beneath the shadowed arches, drew the hopeful as it always had, young girls seeking glimpses of their future, brides praying for fruitfulness, mothers craving strength for the trials of birth. Margaret Ellison was one such soul. At 21, she was a seamstress with deft fingers and a quiet resilience, her dark hair pinned neatly beneath a cap, her hazel eyes bright with dreams. Born to a family of dockworkers, she knew the rhythm of Jarrow's tides and the weight of its struggles. Her heart belonged to William, a shipwright of 24, whose broad hands built vessels that sailed the world. William was a man of few words, his face weathered by the North Sea's salt, but his smile, rare and warm, lit Margaret's world. Their love had blossomed slowly, rooted in shared moments. A dance at the harvest fair, a walk along the Tyne, a promise sealed with a silver ring William had saved a year to buy. But love in Jarrow was not without cost. Margaret's father, a stern man worn by years at the docks, disapproved of William's trade, calling it too uncertain in a world of iron and steam. Marry a clerk, he urged, someone steady. Margaret, her spirit as unyielding as the oak of Bede's chair, refused. She and William set their wedding for the spring of 1913, determined to build a life together. The ceremony was simple, held in St. Paul's with a handful of kin and the scent of lilacs in the air. Margaret's gown, stitched by her own hands, shimmered with quiet pride, her veil trailing like mist. After the vows, old Agnes took her arm, leading her to the chair as tradition demanded. The older woman's voice was soft but firm. "Sit, lass. Ask for what's to come. Children, strength, a home that holds." Margaret settled into the chair, its wood cool beneath her palms, its surface smooth from centuries of hopeful hands. She closed her eyes, her fingers brushing the silver ring, and whispered a prayer for a family, for William's safety, for a future brighter than Jarrow's coal-stained skies. The church was silent, save for the faint creak of the oak and the rustle of her veil on the stone floor. Agnes nodded, her eyes warm. "Bede's heard thee," she said. "Now live the life you've asked for." That night, Margaret followed another custom. With a trembling hand, she slipped into St. Paul's under cover of dusk, her sister Clara at her side. The church was dim, lit only by a single candle, its flame dancing on the chair's scarred surface. Margaret, guided by Clara's giggles and the old rhyme, pried a tiny splinter from the chair's arm, small enough to tuck beneath her pillow. That night, she dreamed of William, not as he was, but older, his hair streaked with grey, a child at his knee. She woke with tears in her eyes, the splinter clutched in her hand, certain the chair had shown her truth. Months passed, and the signs of life stirred within her. Margaret returned to the chair, as countless mothers had before, her hands steady despite the weight of her hopes. Old Agnes was there, her voice a murmur as she handed Margaret a chip of the chair's wood. "Soak it in water, lass. Drink deep. It'll ease the way." Margaret did as she was told, the infusion bitter and earthy, like the soil of Jarrow itself. She felt a calm settle over her, as if Bede's spirit, or something older, watched from the shadows. But the world beyond St. Paul's was not so kind. In the winter of 1913, William's ship, a merchant vessel bound for Norway, was caught in a North Sea storm. Word reached Jarrow in fragments. A broken mast, a crew lost to the waves. Margaret, heavy with child, stood by the Tyne, her shawl clutched against the wind, refusing to believe he was gone. She visited the chair daily, her prayers a plea for his return, her hands tracing the wood scars as if they held answers. When spring came, Margaret gave birth to a son named Henry after William's father. The labour was long, but the infusion from Bede's chair, or perhaps her own fierce will, carried her through. She held her son in the church, sitting once more in the chair, her tears falling onto his tiny head. Old Agnes, watching from the pews, smiled. "Bede saw ye through, lass. And William's with thee, in the boy." The Great War came soon after, and Jarrow changed. The shipyards roared, but grief hung heavy, with too many sons lost to mud and metal. The chair remained, though fewer came to seek its blessing as the world turned to machines and doubt. Yet Margaret never forgot. She raised Henry alone, her needle earning their keep, her stories of William and the chair keeping his memory alive. When asked how she endured, she'd touch the silver ring on her finger and say, "Bede's wood gave me strength, and love gave me Henry." The tale of Margaret and William spread, becoming part of Jarrow's lore. By the 1920s, a young teacher named Ellen, inspired by Agnes's stories, began recording the chair's history, her notebook filled with sketches and accounts of its power. One evening, Ellen sat in the chair herself, hoping for a glimpse of her own future. She dreamed of a man with kind eyes, and though she never spoke of it, she married a schoolmaster 2 years later, her smile hinting at the chair's truth. In 1950, a girl named Rose, Henry's daughter, found a splinter of oak in her grandmother Margaret's sewing box, wrapped in a faded ribbon. Rose, 16 and curious, slipped it beneath her pillow, dreaming of a boy she'd met at a dance. She told no one, but when she wed him a decade later, she carved their initials into a tree by the Tyne, a nod to the chair that had guided her. Today, Bede's chair stands in St. Paul's Church, its oak scarred but steadfast, its surface gleaming from the touch of countless hands. The world has changed, Jarrow's shipyards are quiet, and the internet hums where railways once roared, but the chair endures, a relic of faith and folklore. Visitors pause before it, drawn by its quiet power, some whispering the old rhyme, "Lay Bede's wood beneath thy head, and dream of whom thou art to wed." Old Agnes is gone, and Margaret's story lives in Rose's children, who tell. The wood remembers, they say, the prayers, the dreams, the love that shaped it. Whether its magic lies in the oak or the hearts that seek it, Bede's chair keeps its vigil, waiting for the next dreamer to sit and hope. So, if you visit St. Paul's and feel the chair's worn surface, listen closely. You may hear the echo of Margaret's prayers, or the whisper of a rhyme that still holds true. For in Jarrow, hope is holy, and the wood never forgets. Many thanks for treading this tale's dark path. If its chill gripped you, like, follow, subscribe, and comment below.